Don't look now, but your meat is going to be much harder to come by in the coming months. The WEF plan to eliminate beef production, remove farmers, is coming to fruition, replacing wheat with bugs. So your flour that you're used to in your cooking ingredients may end up having bugs in it from now on.
All-purpose bugs.
All-purpose bugs. Because, as the World Economic Forum says, they're more sustainable. Bugs more sustainable to put that as flour rather than trying to get wheat, right? Let's use that. Before you say that this is just a conspiracy theory, just visit the WEF's website. Do a cursory search. You don't even have to dive deep like we do. You can just do like surface stuff and do a search for bugs if you like. You'll see tons of articles about the benefits of getting rid of meat and eating bugs, like this one, Burgers, Bugs, and the Shift to a New Way of Eating. You can learn how to do it. This is an article from 2019, and there's more recently. So Klaus Schwab and his merry band of globalists have been laying the groundwork for eliminating meat for over a decade now, and the plan is now coming together. See, they lay the groundwork, they infiltrate all of these cabinets around the world, they put their young World Economic Forum leaders like Justin Trudeau in place, and then they tell them what to do. And that's exactly what's happening.
It kind of, well, and you don't really have to like look far to see it, because like I'm a meat eater, and I just paid $17.99 a pound for meat that I used to get for way less than that, for like a New York strip. But I like to get really good meat. And so what they're going to do is price the meat out of your reach and then come in with this, hey, we've got this really great cheap solution.
Yeah, a meat alternative made with bugs, like some sort of a Beyond Meat product. That's why Bill Gates is so heavily invested in that stuff.
Yeah, and of course they want to do that, but they want to price it out because they don't want to eat bugs. They want you to eat bugs.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I know. You get these like celebrities on TV occasionally doing these like, well, I'm going to try bugs, like Nicole Kidman and so forth. And like, yeah, they're really good. They're not bad. They're not eating this stuff. Are you kidding me?
No.
Not at all. So not long after the WEF told us to start eating bugs, the media synced right up with them. It was amazing to watch the cacophony. Get that? Get it? The cacophony of locusts that then came in and immediately started doing the bidding of Klaus Schwab. So they put out the message, eat bugs is okay, and the mainstream media jumps all over it with all of these supportive articles, why eat bugs, an intro to edible insects with Joseph Yoon. Well, he'll walk you through how to do it. Here's The Guardian. If we want to save the planet, the future of food is insects. Here's the BBC. Could grasshoppers really replace beef? Of course they could. Keep going. Just roll through them. Mine aren't loading on my side. So here's Time Magazine. They're healthy. They're sustainable. So why don't humans eat more bugs? Eating insects could cut your environmental impact by more than 80%, says a Finnish study. Finland. Put a pin in that for a second. Forbes magazine. So this morning, Finland is rolling out new bread with 70 crushed crickets in each loaf. They call it a solution to the evils of animal agriculture. Man,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So the evils of animal agriculture. Watch this. Finland has made bread with crushed insects. There are 70 dried and ground crickets in each loaf. Crickets make the bread a good source of protein.
Wait. Can we pause this for a second? If we're talking about evil, we're going to kill 70 things instead of one? Does that math work out? Are we not supposed to think that these were living things? Like, it's right to have compassion for all living things, right?
No, because this is the argument that really upsets vegans when you point out to them that, hey, all of your lettuce and all of your greens, when you cleared that entire field and forest, killed all sorts of small animals, including
habitats
mice,
for snakes, mice,
rabbits.
Yeah.
Birds, everything.
Worms.
But don't tell that to them because they get really upset about it.
Okay.
It's an inconvenient
But
truth.
we're supposed to think that like 70 bugs in one bread is a better ethical trade-off than one
Yeah, but we don't.
cow.
It's not even about ethics
They
in
don't
this.
have brains or feel pain.
Right. So it's not about ethics, right? It's not about the morality of it for this. It's about sustainability. They don't really care about the morality.
Okay, I have more questions about that.
So
but
I think the World
Like a
Economic
million bugs to one rabbit, right?
Yeah, and the World Economic Forum, I don't think gives a rat's ass about the morality of these animals. What they care about is what they see as the CO2 emissions, the climate impact, the sustainability of which we've debunked here on the show at length.
many times,
but it's worth doing again in this capacity. So let's play. This is Finland's new ad This is the World Economic Forum boasting what Finland is doing about this bakery, hoping to roll out these insects. In the future, we might all eat a lot more insects. They require much less feed than traditional meats, it says. They also require much less land. And if we replace half the animal products we eat with insects or lab-grown meat, we'd free up an area 70 times the size of the UK. We'd also sustainably reduce emissions. Right. Would you eat a loaf of cricket bread? So there it is, cricket bread.
Okay, so we care about land use now because sustainable energy or reusable energy takes up acres and acres of land, whereas the way we produce our energy now takes up less than 1% of land use, especially in the United States. So
no, what they want is
land bad if it's used for agriculture, which actually is in a conversation with, the environment. Land good if we put solar panels on it,
I guess, and make cricket bread with it, then it's fine. But also, it's all in a drive to the 15-minute city solution, right? So it's how can we use this land more sustainably by crowding as many people as we possibly can into this zone, and then forcing them to not eat meat or anything like that. And we'll just make sure that all of their food is shipped to them
Jason
locally.
Haynes in the chat says roly-poly stew. That's gross. Oh. That's like How to Eat Fried Worms. Remember that novel as a kid?
Yeah.
No.
Was that Judy Blume?
I don't think it was.
No, but I remember that one.
I don't think so.
But think about they're also, if they move this forward, you get rid of like refrigeration. Like I think the sustainability of it would be much longer too. You wouldn't need a lot of these things to store it. So you could be like going to the shelf. It's like buying rations basically because it's got bugs in it. What's
that's exactly
dry it out.
That's exactly what they're talking about. So here we go. Glad you provided me a segue. So, of course, there are those that call this a conspiracy theory, and they couldn't be more wrong. I mean, just look at the documents, of course, which show that these countries have already agreed to reduce or eliminate traditional agriculture, the transportation that David was just talking about of the meat, right, the refrigeration, all of that, the meat consumption in order to reach climate goals by 2030. So this is the C40's Cities Initiative. You can read about it, the future of urban consumption in a 1.5 degrees Celsius world. So their goal, of course, is 1.5 degrees Celsius, the reduction of that. You can read it, dive deeply into the argument. You can read through all of it. It's very dense. It's not fun reading, but it is eye-opening because of the things that they're proposing here. It's really, really troubling. And so you can read all about it on the c40.org, whatever, c40. Website. But here, I just want to point this out. What science says the benefits of getting there. So if you go down to number 6 here, consumption categories that they're targeting: food, buildings, infrastructure, private transport, aviation, clothing, and reduced car ownership and other forms of transportation. And then broadening the city's efforts to combat climate emissions. So their goal, of course, is zero private vehicles. They don't want you transporting meat. They don't want you to have any meat, and they don't want you to transport it, David.
You know what this reminds me of is like back in the day, I remember when CFLs, they were pushing CFLs. They had all this data. They put out these documents like that. If you buy CFL light bulbs, we're going to reduce everything by this. You got to buy CFLs, got to buy CFLs. Everybody did it. And guess what? It was worse for the environment because you can't dispose of them.
Right.
So it's like they put all this stuff up and yeah, it's like this is going to be the same damn thing. They have all these solutions, but when you really dig into the solutions, you find that they're bigger problems than they would be if they just left it the hell alone.
Like this, like you're talking about the wind farms. I mean, I saw an article today, literally talking about the amount of turbines or the what do you call them? The spires on a windmill. I don't know what you call them. The whatever they're non-recyclable. The props, they're non-recyclable. We've known this, we've talked about it, but I saw a field where they're just filled and they're covering them up. Basically, they can't recycle them. They're non-recyclable.
They're fiberglass. They're made out of fiberglass, which is like composites of what is it? There's different chemicals in it. I can't remember the chemicals, but catalyst and resin and all this other stuff that doesn't biodegrade either.
Great. That's fine.
Great for the environment. And they break fairly regularly. So there you go, windmills. So as part of the C40's initiative, numerous cities around the world, including London, New York, Toronto, Sydney, and Auckland, have set themselves an ambitious target of zero private vehicles, zero meat, and dairy consumption by the year 2030. Zero meat. These, as the Federalist writes, these 14 American cities have a target of banning meat by 2030 in America. So let's see if your city is on the list. Nearly 100 cities around the world have made up the organization, and its American members include Austin, Boston, Chicago, Houston, Los Angeles, Miami, New Orleans. Yeah,
that's like the home of barbecue.
The barbecue
how in the hell could you?
Yeah. Austin, can you imagine? And Houston, New Orleans. Say goodbye to your jambalaya. Miami, New York City, Philadelphia. Hello, cheesesteaks. One of my favorite foods in the world. My hometown. You're not touching my cheesesteaks. Phoenix, Portland, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and Seattle. Oh, Los Angeles. I forgot Los Angeles. Yes. But, I mean...
Something just doesn't strike... So it's not as appealing as like a Philly cheese, like cheese roach sandwich. You know, like it just doesn't...
cheese hopper? A cheese grasshopper sandwich?
Cheese hopper.
It'd have to be vegan cheese too.
Ugh. Can you imagine? Cheese. Oh, yeah. You can't go downtown to John's Roast Pork in South Philly, down by the IKEA, the best cheesesteak in Philadelphia, and eat that cheesesteak, and it has like crickets in it.
Would they
tell you
still,
to get the hell out of there.
Like cricket cheese?
Would they be getting rid of milk too? Milk and cheese, like that's part of this?
Well, eventually. I mean, I haven't seen too much demonization of dairy yet, but how can you? I don't know. It's not my plan. Don't ask me.
So, according to the Federalist, 14 American cities are part of this global climate organization known as the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group. They have the target by year 2030 of 0 kilograms of meat consumption, 0 of dairy, 3 new clothing items per person per year. That's all you're allowed to buy. 3 new clothing items per year per person. You would die. 0 private vehicles. And 1 short-hauled return flight, less than 1,500 kilometers every 3 years per person. So no real airline travel. And they're getting on board with this. So these cities, I mean, you think like this is a personal decision. No. Like Philadelphia International Airport, based on if you're a Philly resident, like you wouldn't be able to travel out of Philadelphia International Airport because you've already had one of these longer flights. Like, what the hell?
That is crazy.
But this is where we're going. And this is, of course, your social credit score. This is where where they are moving us towards with a digital ID and tracking all of this. And here's their reduction plan. So this is right from their website. As I was diving through the data today, I couldn't believe. So look at these numbers here, okay? They want to reduce in these cities, just pay attention, 44% on the left side of your screen for buildings and infrastructure. Look at this, 60% food reduction in your city. Private transport down 39%. Clothing and textiles 66%. Electronics just down 33%. And aviation down 55%. But the biggest one by consumption is food. So that, in the way that we do that, we replace them with bugs, we eliminate meat, we force you to eat Bill Gates' Beyond Meat fake food garbage. There's a woman.
There's going to be. I was going to say, there's going to be people like, was this cricket fed with organic trash, or is this a grass fed cricket, or
organic trash?
My question is, in these cities, is what because there'll be an exemption, and there'll probably be some kind of licensing to get an exemption, and I want to know how much that's going to be. Because, like I said,
carbon offset
there's no way
credit.
in hell the people pushing this, there's no way in hell the people pushing this want anything to do with it. This is for us, not for them.
They'll still go to the Caribbean or Hawaii. Yeah.
On their private jets. Yeah, it won't be commercial aviation, so they'll just take their private jets.
Right. We've already seen in Europe that some certain climate restrictions on planes don't apply to private jets. They're exempt.
Yeah. So Greenpeace co-founder Dr. Patrick Moore, has seen the light on this, and he's talking. So these consumption goals, right, of reducing the amount of food, reducing fossil fuels, reducing food consumption for these people is a death wish for people. Listen.
If we actually achieve net zero, at least 50% of the population would die of hunger and disease. And no doubt about it, because just one thing, which is nitrogen-based fertilizer, at least 50% of the population depends on nitrogen fertilizer for its existence today. There's no doubt about that. And there's people trying to ban it. And Netherlands and Sri Lanka have already made these kind of moves. And So it is truly a death wish in disguise, and the disguise is to save the Earth.
Yeah, that is exactly the death wish. These net zero goals are insane. The goal of the C40, though, is to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Drop it by 1.5 degrees Celsius. You've heard John Kerry talking about that. That is the goal that they all talk about.
The monarchs talk about this.
Yeah, they're all focused on this 1.5, right? Even, so King Charles with his whole doomsday billboard thing that he's got, 1.5 degrees. If we don't do it by 2030, we're all going to die. Of course, they've been telling us this for 40 years, and that billions of people were going to die, and that hasn't happened. The opposite has happened. And what they're saying is, if you read from their website here, this is exactly what they're saying. To limit warming, this requires systemic change towards a net zero and resilient economy at an unprecedented scale and pace. A just transition is about leaving no one behind in this shift, protecting livelihoods, and maximizing the employment benefits of climate action. But so it's worth asking, who came up with this arbitrary 1.5 degrees Celsius target that John Kerry and Al Gore love to throw around and the monarchs love to throw around? And by the way, this entire C40 organization that's backed by Bill Clinton and Michael Bloomberg and all of these people love to throw around. Well, every one of you watching this show should pay attention to this. So you can use this in comments and arguments around the Thanksgiving dinner table when someone says, if we don't hit this climate goal by 2030, we're all going to die. 1.5 degrees Celsius. As Alex Epstein writes in his great book, I encourage all of you to read this great book called Fossil Future. He explains a goal of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees since the 1800s has no scientific basis whatsoever. The 1800s were a very cold time, the Little Ice Age, of course, and the 1 degree Celsius warming since then has coincided with the greatest improvement in human life in history, in large part due to fossil fuels. He says that the West, when people talk about 1.5 of warming as a catastrophic, it's even more absurd than it sounds, because it's not 1.5 degrees warming starting now. It's 1.5 degrees total since the 1800s, which means it's 0.5 degrees Celsius warmer than now, in a world where far more people die of cold than heat, by the way. So its warming is actually helping us. Go ahead, David.
Well, and it just makes it sound like they can get so many more people on board. It's like, if you do this, it's only this much we've got to change and everything's going to be perfect. It's like, it's such a small, in people's heads, they're like, oh, that's what we got to do. It's a marketing tactic. It just makes it sound like it's an easy thing to do if we all just do this one thing, and that's eat bugs and,
Right. And many climate researchers like Bjorn Lundberg and Michael Schellenberger have done research that shows that when capitalistic forces are allowed to take on any given thing, such as electricity, energy, these types of things, for instance, instead of using plastics, humans used to use turtle shells, where we would literally rip them off of turtles. That's not sustainable or humane, or wasn't even a great product, but we used it for certain things in life. Now we have plastics, and plastics are being demonized because it's making our lives too good, I guess. But there is innovation in plastics that does make them biodegradable. And we've shown you research here that show that modern plastics leach fewer chemicals than these shitty paper straws that we're replacing them with. So a lot of times humans take care of these things ourselves through innovation when it is allowed in a prosperous nation. So Germany and the United States have already had climate emissions peak. Did you know that? So how come those wealthy nations were allowed to prosper, industrialize, have their climate emissions peak, and then start to go down because of innovation? But China can't? But India can't?
No,
we need
Africa
to lecture
can't.
Africa. You cannot have your climate emissions peak in order to raise the prosperity of your people.
Well,
that's only for us.
And that's what Alex Epstein writes about in his book, is that in other words, when these people talk about reducing fossil fuels, aiming towards this 1 degree cooling plan, you're basically telling billions of poor people in these poor nations that they can't use fossil fuels to lift themselves up out of poverty, as we have done in the West. So you have to jump right to wind farms, which we've proven don't work for sustainability. It's absurd. In fact, we will be creating our own catastrophe by doing this. pushing people into starvation. It's genocide, quite honestly. And they want a global population decline so that they, of course, get what they want. It's all part of their plan. Has anyone stopped to ask if these net zero goals, eliminating farms and fossil fuels, will result in harm for the planet? Has anyone asked if these emissions from human beings are even responsible for warming? Professor Ian Plimer is Australia's best-known geologist. So see this on your screen here. They had him scheduled to give a speech in I think in the UK, and I think this was in the UK. Forgive me if I'm wrong here. And the hotel that was supposed to host it, they kept getting declined. Everywhere they were going to host his talk on the environment, to set up to give this speech, the hotels kept canceling on him, saying, we can't take him, we can't take him, we can't take him. He's the emeritus professor of earth sciences at the University of Melbourne. He's one of the best-known geologists in Australia. He is the best-known geologist in Australia. He's been canceled many times for asking Australia's government to prove what they're saying, but they can't do it. And they refuse to be able to actually give him the science about it. So here he explains how he's been canceled and how this unfolds. Watch.
Can you please show me that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming? Now, it's a trick question. We'll come to that. They couldn't. This is a question that I've been asking scientists around the world for 25 years. I've asked journalists this question. I've asked politicians this question. It's no wonder I get cancelled, because no one can show from the scientific literature that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming.
So who's behind the C40 initiative? And you might be wondering, of course, a group of globalists, Bill Clinton and Michael Bloomberg. It was founded in 2005, and some of the key players there who've donated lots of money to it and make it happen, part of this larger World Economic Forum plan. And you can go to their website and get your Just Transition Toolkit. So if you're one of these new cities that signed up for this and you want to move everyone away from meat, force them to start eating bugs, get off of their cars, sell their cars, only buy 3 pieces of clothing, you can get your Just Transition Toolkit and teach people how to do it. It's right there on their website. They encourage you to download it so you know how to talk to people in your community about stopping eating meat. And if you're part of the C40 initiative, you can hand that out to people. And of course, you can all learn how to retrofit your buildings. That's a big piece of this document. How to retrofit your buildings, create green jobs. That's in the document as well. And working towards creating these 15-minute cities where you won't need a car, you won't need farms. You'll have everything delivered right to your house in the palm of your hand within 15 minutes. You can walk anywhere in 15 minutes, and that's it. You have to get a credit or some sort of a voucher if you want to travel outside of the 15 minutes to go see grandma who lives in a whole other town. Have you reached your carbon credits cap this month? Sorry, you can't go see grandma. Their entire fear-mongering, of course, hinges on this 1.5 degrees garbage that we've just talked about. So maybe they should listen to, has anyone even asked the question about this? Is the Earth warming is the Earth warming beyond some kind of normal cycle? And is it actually warming at all? Or could it be cooling instead? And this is exactly Dr. Plimer's point that I hope everyone pays attention to. Watch.
We have been cooling down for the last 4,000 years. So if people say, oh, the planet's warming, well, it's all about when you start the measurements. If we look at the last 38 years, there has been no change in temperature. If we look in the last 150 years, we've had 3 warming periods and 3 cooling periods with a total warmth of about 0.6 degrees Celsius. Now, I wonder why it warms. I mean, 1850, what happened then? Oh, yes, that was the end of the Little Ice Age. Do you think it's going to warm or cool after a Little Ice Age? Of course it's going to warm. So if you start taking measurements from 1850 in the Industrial Revolution, we have been warming. If you take measurements from the medieval warming, we've been cooling. We've cooled about 5 degrees since then. If you take measurements from the Roman warming, we've cooled about 5 degrees. So as soon as someone tells you, oh, it's warming, the reply you give is, since when?
I hope everyone pays attention to that. So when anyone
so
says to you,
simple.
I know, when someone ever says to you that we are experiencing warming, there is global warming. Our kids have global anxiety about, climate crisis. Get out there and pick up trash everywhere. Everyone should pick up trash, right? That helps. It helps beautify the neighborhood. Is it helping global warming? No. And is it actually warming? You can ask the question, from when? When is it actually warming? Oh, the medieval period, the Roman period. Just play that clip over and over to people around your Thanksgiving table. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.